Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I have got my April wrap up of all the books that I read in April. Okay, so in April I read 3 physical books, I listened to 1 audiobook, and I DNF'd 1 ebook. So let's get into the physical books first of all. So this is the 5th book in the Series of Unfortunate Events series. It is called The Austere Academy, and this basically is now following the siblings as they are sent to a boarding school of sorts, and they are trying to essentially navigate their way through this new situation and essentially how Olaf is going to once again make their lives a living hell. So I think this is potentially my favourite book of the series so far. I give this a 4 stars, which is not, I mean, it's like the same as one of the other books that I gave in terms of rating. I just really liked the fact that, it sounds really weird, but there are like not many adults involved. I liked the fact that the siblings were making friends for the first time. They kind of found some peers who, you know, kind of were on the same wavelength as them. And I really enjoyed the storyline of this. I did find it got a bit slow in the middle, hence me knocking off a star, because I am finding that now. There is a little lull in all of these books at some point, normally in the middle, and it just goes on for a little bit too long. But I did really enjoy this. I thought this was really, really fun, and it's really made me excited to carry on the series because we're not quite at the halfway point yet. And the last couple of books did kind of weigh me down a little bit. So I'm really glad this picked things up for me. I am also in love with the cover of this one and the colouring. I just think it's fab. Obviously this is a set which I kind of bought all together. But I feel like this one, like the green is really appealing to me. So fab work on the cover art. The next book which I read, which was a physical book, was 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. I wanted to love this so much more than I did. So I was reading this alongside a couple of people in the Book Wanderers book club, and we were all really excited. I mean, it's really pretty cover, isn't it? This is one of those ones where it's a pretty cover, but there is not much going on between the pages. And I'm so disappointed. Basically, this follows a princess and her 6 brothers. They're living quite happily until one day they discover that their stepmother has magic, which is essentially banned on the island that they live. It's been normally been banished off the island or into the mountains there. So I really liked the aspect of like the folklore behind it. I thought that was really, really cool, and the legends and the myths that are told in this. And then essentially what happens is her stepmother finds out, basically transports the princess really, really far away and sticks a bowl on her head, and the brothers are turned into 6 Crimson Cranes. And essentially the idea is that she is trying to free her brothers and essentially get back home and to break this curse which she is put under and that her brothers are put under as well. My issues with this book: I love fantasy. It is one of my favourite genres. It's not my top, but it is one of my favourite genres. And I just found that this did not have a lot of substance in terms of the writing. It was all over the place. It contradicted itself at certain points. The timing was very weird. We would suddenly jump from one thing to another and it didn't flow very well. It was very kind of jarring. I did enjoy the characters. I thought there were some really nice characters in here. I absolutely love Kiki. She was one of my favourite characters. I love a character with a bit of sass, and she definitely had that. I didn't mind our main character. I know some other people in the group that were reading it really didn't gel with her. I didn't mind her, but I definitely found that the side characters were the stronger characters in this book. And I just found that it was just really weak. And I think that the world building in some ways was really great in terms of the folklore, but then it lacked in certain other places as well. It did not need to be as long. This is about 450 pages. And it was I've not given a 2-star out for a long while. And this was a 2-star book. it's just such a shame. And this is a series, I'm not going to carry on with the series, but it just had so much potential. There were dragons involved and like the magic was really cool. But yeah, I just felt like this really fell flat for me. I've heard really good things about this. This is the other thing I don't get. This is really highly rated on Goodreads and I was like, how? I think I've been spoiled by ACOTAR, to be brutally honest. I've been really spoiled with that series. I know I've only read the first book. I am going to try and read the second book this month. Okay, so the third physical book that I read in April is The House of Fortune by Jessie Burton. This is the second book in the Miniaturist series, which, who knew it was going to be a series? I read the first book really hoping there was going to be a sequel because I was just disappointed with how the Miniaturist story kind of ended. We didn't get a huge amount from her or about her, and I wanted to know more. So I was excited to delve into this. I also buddy read this with someone in the Book Wanderers group, and it was okay. I think the problem with sequels is they are really hard to live up to the first book in the series, and this definitely felt like this in this case. I'm not going to spoil it too much because the main character is a bit of a spoiler, but essentially we follow in this second one of the characters from the first book. Time has passed, it's about 18 years later from the first book, and it's essentially following their journey. I can't say any more because it will spoil it. I will say that Nella is still here and I am loving her, absolutely. I felt like she was the strongest character in the book, and I'm not going to say how much of a role she has in this, but I just loved her arc in this. I feel like she's really evolved from the first book, and she's fighting her own demons and she's got her own struggles, but I just loved her journey through this, and I really gelled with her more than some of the other characters. In terms of what happened in this, I didn't find it as gripping. I felt like the first book had the perfect amount of being gripping but without in a really kind of startling way. The first book was really eerie and creepy but without not in a horror way, and I just felt like Jessie Burton really nailed that, and I just didn't feel like it got it in this book. Like, it still had some really good moments in it, and there were some really cool characters who were introduced as well, but yeah, it just didn't quite live up to this. I think I gave this a 3.5 or a 3.75. I gave this a 3.75 just for the fact that it didn't quite live up to the first book. But I would say that this series is definitely worth a read. I don't think there's going to be a third book. I didn't think this was going to happen, so I don't know. But I would definitely read, if there was a third book, I definitely would read it. Okay, so let's move on to the audiobook that I listened to in April, and that was Peter Pan. So this was one that I didn't actually intend on listening to because I was still waiting for Clara and the Sun. If you don't know what happened, I talk about it in my January to March wrap up. I was just waiting for Clara and the Sun, and I was still waiting for Clara and the Sun after I finished the ABC Murders, and I wanted something to listen to, so I decided to listen to Peter Pan because it was about 5 hours long, so relatively short in terms of audiobooks, and I loved every minute. I thought it was great. I gave this a 5 stars. It was just such a little nostalgic listen, and I've never actually read the book of Peter Pan. I've always just seen it in visual form, so to listen to it or read it was a really cool experience. I think the guy who read this as well is a really cool actor called Jim Dale. He was kind of like in a lot of the Carry On films. He was in Barnum as well. I think he was the first person to play that role, and I just found that he really brought the characters to life so well. His accents are so cool, and I just found it was just really fun. I just really enjoyed it. I would love to read this physically as well, but I just found that he really brought it to life for me, and I think sometimes it comes across better in audiobook, and I feel like even if I did read it, I feel like the audiobook is an absolute must to listen to, especially read by Jim Dale. Highly, highly recommend. A lot of fun. Okay, and the last book, which is the book that I DNF'd, was Bear Town by Fredrik Backman. Again, I was really sad I didn't like this. So I DNF'd this at about 52%. If I get past about 30%, I persevere, because I feel like by that point, if I'm reading it, I'll carry on reading it. And I feel like, I just felt like I was giving up on it. Maybe I was, maybe I was. I just found that I didn't gel with the characters and the storyline. There was a lot of characters, and I don't mind that, but I found the structure in the way that they kind of, it changed between the characters just didn't work for me. I found that the chunks of the characters, of the dialogue of each character, was just way too small. Like it would be like a page, and then suddenly we would be on to the next character. And for me, I just couldn't keep up with all those characters. Like, for example, I think again I mentioned in my January to March wrap up, was the fact that in the book club that I'm in, the Book Wanderers, some people didn't get on with Cloud Cuckoo Land, with the multiple POVs, but I really got on with that because it was like a whole chapter for each character. And I'm reading The Book That Wouldn't Burn at the moment, and that's a similar sort of thing. It's a couple of chapters per character. It's only kind of dual POV, but still it's the same kind of idea. But this one, within the chapter we would change like multiple times in terms of characters. And I just found that the characters never really got fleshed out. I am really disappointed because so many people rave about this series, and I even expected to love it so much that I bought the whole series on my Kindle. So I think I will go back to this at some point. I think I'm going to try and read one of Backman's other books before returning to this series. Maybe it was because of the fact that this was, it's quite a hard-hitting book. I don't mind hard-hitting books, but I think it would be easier to maybe go for one of his shorter books first, just to get into the style of his writing. And I think as well, I think the problem was also reading it on Kindle, because of the fact that I wasn't just picking it up as much as I say I would a physical book. I read my Kindle when I'm traveling, if I'm at the doctor's, if I'm waiting somewhere, I'll be reading my Kindle. So I think it would be different if I read it in a physical form. I don't know, I may try it again and I still might not get on with it. I also didn't get on with the sports references. I just felt like sometimes a lot of it went over my head. Anyway, so that was the only book I DNF'd. I've not DNF'd a book in a long while, so hopefully it'll be a long while before I DNF another book. There we go, those are all the books that I read in April. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know what books you read in April as well. And also as well, because with a couple of these books, these have been turned into series. I've not watch the Miniaturist adaptation. If anyone's watched it, please do let me know, because I feel like that would be a really cool one to watch. I need to kind of do that. And same with the Lemony Snicket series. I watched the film, I loved the film, but I've not seen the Netflix adaptation. And I feel like that looks really good. I can't watch that yet though, because that goes through, I think, pretty much all the books. So I'm staying clear of that until I finish reading the series, because I feel like it would be a huge spoiler. But I do want to get to that at some point. But do let me know if you've watched any of those adaptations as well. Please do subscribe if you are new, and I will see you in my next video. Mwah. Bye.